You're about to witness something most travel documentaries won't show you. While everyone's busy chasing Instagram spots in Bali or getting ripped off in Paris, there's a massive country sitting between Europe and Asia that most people can't even pronounce correctly. Kazakhstan. And before you start quoting Borat, let me stop you right there. This place will flip every stereotype you've got upside down. Standing here in Astana's Khan Shatter Mall, watching locals in designer clothes sip artisanal coffee under a climate-controlled dome in the middle of what used to be frozen wasteland, I'm asking the question that brought me here. How far can $700 actually take you in the world's 9th largest country? The answer might shock you, especially when you see what passes for nightlife in a place most people think is full of goat herders. But first, let me paint you a real picture of Kazakhstan. This isn't some dusty post-Soviet backwater. This is a country where oil money has built the cities that look like they're from the year 2050, where nomadic traditions survive alongside hipster coffee shops, and where the nightlife scene would put most European capitals to shame. The contradictions here are wild, and they're about to get a whole lot wilder. Standing on the observation deck of Almaty's Koktob Hill, watching the sun set behind snow-capped peaks that framed this city of nearly 2 million people, you realize Kazakhstan has been keeping secrets. Big ones. The kind that make you question why you spent your last vacation fighting crowds in Barcelona when you could have been here, living like royalty on a backpacker's budget. The landscape stretches endlessly in every direction. We're talking about a country that's roughly the size of Western Europe, yet has only 19 million people. That's more space per person than you can wrap your head around. To the north, endless steppes roll toward Russia like a green ocean. To the south, the Tian Shan Mountains create a natural border with Kyrgyzstan, their peaks sharp enough to cut glass. And somewhere in between, in cities that didn't exist 30 years ago, people are living lives that would make your suburban existence look boring. This land has seen everyone pass through. The Mongols swept across these steppes like wildfire. The Soviets tried to turn nomads into factory workers. The Chinese traded silk for horses along routes that still exist today. Each wave of history left its mark, creating a culture that's uniquely Kazakh but influenced by everyone who ever crossed this massive territory. The nomadic heritage runs deeper than you might think. For centuries, Kazakh tribes moved their animals across these steppes, following ancient patterns that maximized grazing land and minimized conflict. They lived in portable yurts, developed a complex system of hospitality laws, and created a society where your reputation mattered more than your possessions. When the Soviets forced collectivization in the 1930s, millions died in the resulting famine, but the cultural DNA survived. Today, that same nomadic hospitality means you'll be invited into homes by people who met you 5 minutes ago. The Soviet era tried to erase Kazakh identity completely. Russian became the dominant language, Islamic practices were suppressed, and traditional ways of life were systematically destroyed. Entire cities were built from scratch to houseworkers in massive industrial projects. Almaty became a showcase of Soviet urban planning, while the northern steppes were turned into wheat farms that stretched beyond the horizon. Independence in 1991 changed everything, but not in the way most people expected. Instead of collapsing like other former Soviet republics, Kazakhstan struck oil. Massive reserves in the Caspian Sea region started pumping money into the economy. The government moved the capital from Almaty to Astana, a city built from nothing in the middle of nowhere, creating a futuristic showcase that announced Kazakhstan's arrival on the world stage. But here's what makes this place fascinating. The oil money didn't just create glass towers and shopping malls, it funded a cultural renaissance. Young Kazakhs started rediscovering their nomadic roots, traditional music, and cuisine that had been nearly lost during the Soviet years. The result is a society that's simultaneously ancient and ultra-modern, where you can eat horse meat prepared by methods unchanged for 1,000 years, then catch a movie in a mall that wouldn't look out of place in Dubai. The cultural contrast hits you immediately when you start talking to locals. The older generation lived through the Soviet system, speaks fluent Russian, and remembers when expressing Kazakh identity could get you in serious trouble. The younger generation grew up free, learned English in school, and travels internationally like it's no big deal. Yet both groups share something distinctly Kazakh that's hard to define but impossible to miss. Family structures here operate on a completely different level than what most Westerners are used to. Extended families of 20 or 30 people regularly gather for major decisions. Respect for elders isn't just cultural politeness. It's a functioning social system where experience and wisdom actually carry weight. When someone invites you to their home, they're not just being friendly. They're extending temporary membership in a network that goes back generations. This shows up in daily interactions constantly. Stop to ask directions, and someone will walk you to your destination. Look confused in a bazaar, and vendors will explain not just what they're selling, but how to prepare it and where it comes from. Need help with something practical, and locals will drop what they're doing to assist a visitor. It's not tourism industry training. It's genuine cultural programming that views hospitality as a sacred duty. The modern urban lifestyle exists on top of these traditional foundations, like layers of history you can actually touch. In Almaty's trendy coffee shops, young professionals switch between Kazakh, Russian, and English mid-conversation. They're discussing startup ideas over traditional kurt, dried cheese balls, and imported espresso. Their parents might still keep horses on family land outside the city, while they're coding mobile apps in downtown offices that would not look out of place in Silicon Valley. This cultural fusion creates situations that would blow your mind. I watched a tech entrepreneur wearing designer jeans and Italian shoes, teaching his 5-year-old son how to properly greet horses using techniques his grandfather learned from nomadic herders. The kid was equally comfortable with both worlds, equally at home playing video games and helping tend animals during summer visits to the family's traditional grazing lands. The language situation reflects this complexity perfectly. While Russian remains dominant in business and education, Kazakh is experiencing a massive revival. Street signs are switching from Cyrillic to Latin alphabet. Pop music in Kazakh is trending on local social media. Traditional stories are being adapted into modern films and TV shows that draw huge audiences. It's cultural reclamation happening in real time, without rejecting the practical benefits of Russian or English fluency. Religious practice adds another layer to daily life that most visitors completely miss. While Kazakhstan is officially secular and religiously tolerant, Islam plays a quiet but significant role for many families. The approach tends to be more cultural than strictly observant. Religious holidays are major family gatherings, Islamic architecture influences modern building design, and traditional values around family and hospitality have religious undertones without being overtly religious. Now, let's talk about the food situation because this is where Kazakhstan gets really interesting. Traditional Kazakh cuisine was designed for people who lived their entire lives on horseback, moving animals across vast distances in harsh climates. Everything had to be portable, nutritious, and made from what nomads could produce or carry themselves. The result is a meat-heavy cuisine that modern nutrition experts would probably have panic attacks about, but which sustained incredibly tough people through conditions that would kill most modern city dwellers. Beshbarmak, the national dish, translates literally to 5 fingers, because traditionally you ate it with your hands. It's boiled meat, usually lamb, but horse meat is common, and considered premium. Served over wide, flat noodles in a meat broth, topped with onions cooked in the same broth. The meat is divided according to strict cultural protocols. Different cuts go to different family members based on age, gender, and status. Guests get the choicest pieces, and refusing them is considered deeply insulting. The first time you try beshbarmak, your reaction will probably be something like, "This tastes like hospital food." It's bland, heavy, and the texture takes getting used to. But here's the thing. After a few days in Kazakhstan, especially if you're doing any outdoor activities, you start craving it. Your body realizes this is incredibly efficient fuel. The fat content keeps you satisfied for hours. The salt content replaces what you lose in the dry climate. The protein supports serious physical activity. It's optimized nutrition disguised as peasant food. Dairy products here go far beyond anything most foreigners have experienced. Kumis, fermented mare's milk, is mildly alcoholic and supposedly has incredible health benefits. The taste is sour, slightly fizzy, and completely unlike anything in your flavor memory. Locals swear by it for everything from digestive health to boosting energy. The fermentation process creates probiotics that would cost a fortune in Western health food stores, but here it's just traditional food preservation. Kurt, those rock-hard balls of dried cottage cheese, serve as portable protein that lasts indefinitely without refrigeration. They're salty, tangy, and require serious jaw strength to chew, but they're also brilliant trail food, compact, nutritious, and satisfying. Modern hikers spend fortunes on freeze-dried meals that don't work as well as something nomads perfected centuries ago. The bread culture deserves its own documentary. Borsak, deep-fried dough pieces, appear at every meal and social gathering. They're crispy outside, fluffy inside, and somehow manage to complement both sweet and savory foods. Naan, traditional flatbread baked in tandoor ovens, has regional variations that locals can identify by taste, like wine experts identifying vintages. The bread isn't just food, it's cultural identity baked into something you can hold in your hands. Tea culture in Kazakhstan operates on levels that make British afternoon tea look casual. Chai is served constantly, in small bowls that are continuously refilled. The brewing, serving, and drinking rituals carry social meaning about respect, hospitality, and relationship status. Refusing tea is almost impossible without causing offense. The good news is that Kazakh tea is actually excellent. Usually green tea with milk, and sometimes sugar, served strong enough to wake the dead. But here's where Kazakhstan gets modern and blows your mind. The contemporary food scene in major cities has exploded into something world-class. Almaty now has restaurants that would hold their own in London or New York. Chefs are taking traditional nomadic ingredients and techniques, then applying international cooking methods to create fusion cuisine that's genuinely innovative. Horse meat carpaccio with local herbs. Kumis-based desserts that somehow work. Beshbarmak reimagined as gourmet pasta dishes that actually taste good. The coffee culture alone would surprise most visitors. Third-wave coffee shops in Almaty serve single-origin beans from around the world, prepared by baristas who trained in Melbourne or Portland. The local roasting scene is developing rapidly, with cafes that focus on traditional Kazakh hospitality combined with specialty coffee expertise. You can get better espresso in Almaty than in most American cities, served by people who will remember your order and ask about your family. International cuisine is everywhere and surprisingly authentic. The Chinese food is legitimate, prepared by Uyghur and Dungan minorities who've maintained culinary traditions through multiple generations. Russian cuisine ranges from standard Soviet-era comfort food to sophisticated modern interpretations. Korean restaurants, run by ethnic Koreans whose families were relocated during Stalin's deportations, serve dishes that Koreans in Seoul would recognize and approve of. The bizarre food scene operates as a parallel universe of incredible eating that most tourists never experience. Vendors who've been perfecting the same dishes for decades serve food that would cost serious money in trendy international restaurants. Except here, it's cheap street food sold without pretension. Plov, pilaf, vendors pile rice with lamb and vegetables into portions that could feed small armies. Shashlik grilled over wood coals tastes better than most steakhouse fare. Samsa pastries, stuffed with meat and onions, come out of tandoor ovens at temperatures that create perfect crispy exteriors around flavorful fillings. Local alcohol traditions add another dimension to social life that catches visitors off guard. While Kazakhstan isn't a major drinking culture compared to neighboring Russia, there are traditional beverages that play important roles in hospitality and celebration. Araka, distilled from kumis, has ceremonial significance at major gatherings. Local beer production has improved dramatically, with craft breweries in major cities producing drinks that rival international standards. The dining etiquette operates on completely different principles than Western restaurant culture. Meals are communal experiences meant to strengthen social bonds, not efficient fuel consumption. Orders arrive when they're ready, not necessarily in any logical sequence. Sharing food is expected, not optional. Leaving food on your plate suggests the host didn't provide enough, which causes genuine distress. Rushing through meals is considered rude and suspicious. What's so important that you can't properly enjoy food and company? Restaurant service reflects these cultural values in ways that initially frustrate visitors, but eventually make sense. Servers aren't trying to turn tables quickly or maximize tips. They're facilitating social experiences that might last hours. Being attentive without being intrusive requires different skills than American-style service. Once you adjust expectations, you realize this approach is actually more relaxing and allows for better conversation and connection. The price differences for food are mind-blowing when you convert to Western currencies. A substantial meal at a good local restaurant costs less than a fast food lunch in most American cities. Street food that would be trendy and expensive in foodie destinations costs pocket change here. Even high-end restaurants in Almaty charge less than mid-range places in Western capitals, while often providing better ingredients and more skilled preparation. Now, let's address the elephant in the room that everyone's thinking about but nobody wants to ask directly. What's the social scene actually like, and what about dating culture? Because this is where Kazakhstan becomes really interesting and completely different from what most people expect. Kazakh women have a reputation throughout the region for being educated, ambitious, and strikingly beautiful. This isn't male fantasy or travel blog nonsense. It's demographic reality based on educational achievement rates, career advancement statistics, and the simple fact that Kazakhstan's diverse ethnic heritage has created some seriously attractive genetic combinations. Walk through central Almaty or Astana, and you'll see women who could be models in any international fashion capital, except they're doctors, engineers, and business executives. The educational statistics are remarkable. Women make up over 60% of university graduates and are increasingly dominant in fields like medicine, law, and finance. Traditional gender roles exist but are rapidly evolving, especially in urban areas. Many young women speak multiple languages, have international travel experience, and career ambitions that extend far beyond traditional domestic expectations. Dating culture operates on fascinating contradictions between traditional values and modern realities. Family approval still matters enormously, but young people have much more autonomy than previous generations. Courtship tends to be more formal and relationship-focused than casual hookup culture common in Western cities. When someone shows romantic interest, it's generally assumed to have serious long-term potential rather than being purely recreational. The social dynamics around foreigners create interesting opportunities and complications. Western men often find themselves getting attention that has nothing to do with their personal attractiveness and everything to do with passport advantages and perceived financial stability. This can be flattering initially but becomes complex when you realize local women are often more educated, accomplished, and interesting than the foreign men pursuing them. Local men tend to be protective of what they consider cultural territory, but this rarely translates into hostility toward foreign visitors who behave respectfully. The key is understanding that dating here isn't casual entertainment. It carries social weight and family implications that don't exist in more individualistic cultures. Approach relationships with appropriate seriousness, and you'll find people remarkably welcoming. Act like you're on spring break and you'll create problems quickly. The nightlife scene will absolutely shock visitors who arrive expecting post-Soviet bleakness. Almaty's party scene rivals anything you'd find in major European cities, with clubs that stay open until dawn, international DJs, and crowds that dress like they're headed to Milan Fashion Week. The quality of entertainment, from sound systems to interior design, meets international standards while costing a fraction of what you'd pay in London or New York. Club culture operates on slightly different principles than typical Western nightlife. VIP table service is extremely important, more so than in most places, and demonstrates social status in ways that affect how you're treated throughout the evening. Dress codes are strictly enforced and tend toward formal elegance rather than casual club wear. The music ranges from international electronic dance music to Russian pop to traditional Kazakh songs remixed for modern audiences. The bar scene offers alternatives to high-energy clubbing that often provide better opportunities for actual conversation and cultural exchange. Craft cocktail bars in Almaty serve drinks that would impress mixologists in cocktail capitals using local ingredients in creative ways. Wine bars feature selections from emerging Central Asian vineyards alongside international options. Beer pubs range from traditional establishments serving local brews to trendy craft beer bars with rotating taps. Age demographics in nightlife venues skew older than typical college party scenes. Many clubs have minimum ages of 25 for men, creating environments where people have established careers, disposable income, and social sophistication. This means conversations tend to be more substantial and connections more meaningful than typical tourist party destinations. The cost structure for nightlife entertainment is where Kazakhstan becomes almost ridiculous compared to Western standards. A night out that would cost $200 in New York might run $40 in Almaty, including dinner, drinks, and club entry. Quality cocktails cost less than domestic beer in most Western cities. VIP table service that would require taking out loans in London is accessible to anyone with a decent travel budget in Kazakhstan. Safety considerations for nightlife are generally minimal compared to most international party destinations. Violent crime rates are low, police presence is visible but not oppressive, and the cultural emphasis on hospitality extends to looking out for visitors who might be vulnerable due to alcohol consumption or unfamiliarity with local conditions. Standard travel precautions apply, but Kazakhstan's nightlife scene is genuinely safer than most alternatives. Social media culture intersects with nightlife in interesting ways that reveal generational and cultural changes happening in real time. Young Kazakhs are heavily invested in Instagram-worthy venues and experiences, driving demand for photogenic restaurants, bars, and clubs. This has pushed establishments to invest in design and presentation that meets international social media standards while maintaining distinctly local character. The music scene deserves special attention because it's where traditional culture and modern entertainment fusion most successfully. Live music venues regularly feature everything from traditional Kazakh folk performances to international rock bands to electronic music that incorporates traditional instruments and melodies. The result is entertainment that's uniquely local but accessible to international audiences. Traditional celebrations and festivals provide nightlife experiences that don't exist anywhere else in the world. Nowruz, the spring equinox celebration, turns entire cities into outdoor parties with traditional music, dancing, and enough food to feed armies. The atmosphere combines ancient traditions with modern party energy in ways that create genuinely magical experiences for visitors lucky enough to be there during major celebrations. Regional variations in nightlife reflect the cultural diversity that makes Kazakhstan fascinating. Astana's scene tends toward upscale sophistication that reflects the capital's political and business importance. Almaty offers more variety, from hipster bars to traditional tea houses to international-style clubs. Smaller cities provide intimate venues where locals and visitors interact more naturally without the performance aspects of major metropolitan nightlife. The festival and cultural event calendar creates seasonal peaks in social activity that transform entire cities into celebration venues. Summer music festivals bring international acts to outdoor stages and settings that combine natural beauty with world-class entertainment. Winter celebrations work around harsh climate conditions to create indoor events that showcase traditional culture alongside modern party energy. Now, let's talk about transportation and how mobility shapes daily life in a country this massive. Kazakhstan's size creates transportation challenges and opportunities that most visitors can't comprehend until they experience them directly. We're talking about distances that dwarf most countries. It's over 3,000 kilometers from east to west, with population centers separated by hundreds of kilometers of empty steppe. The railway system is the backbone of long-distance transportation, inherited from Soviet infrastructure investments and continuously modernized since independence. Train travel here operates on a completely different scale than European railways. Overnight journeys of 12 to 24 hours are routine, and the longest routes can take several days. But this isn't uncomfortable budget transportation. Modern trains offer sleeping compartments, dining cars, and onboard services that make long journeys pleasant rather than endurable. Booking train tickets has become surprisingly sophisticated, with online systems that allow advance reservations and seat selection. Prices remain incredibly reasonable by international standards. A sleeper berth for a 15-hour journey might cost less than a decent hotel room for one night in most Western cities. The social aspect of train travel creates opportunities to meet locals and see landscapes that aren't accessible any other way. Bus transportation operates as a parallel system for shorter routes and connections to smaller towns not served by railways. The quality varies dramatically, from modern, comfortable coaches on major routes to aging Soviet-era vehicles on rural connections. Understanding the bus system requires local knowledge or assistance, since schedules and routes aren't always clearly posted in languages foreigners can read. Marshrutka, shared taxi services, fill gaps between formal transportation options, operating on fixed routes with flexible stops. These minibuses represent grassroots transportation that developed organically to serve actual travel patterns rather than centrally planned routes. They're cheap, frequent, and provide access to places that buses and trains don't reach, but require cultural adaptation to understand how boarding, payment, and etiquette work. Urban transportation in major cities has improved dramatically, with modern bus systems, expanding metro networks, and ride-sharing apps that work exactly like international versions. Almaty's metro system, while limited, provides efficient transportation along major corridors. Bus networks use electronic payment systems and provide real-time scheduling information that makes navigation relatively straightforward for visitors. Taxi services have been revolutionized by smartphone apps that work identically to Uber or Lyft, with transparent pricing and reliable service. Traditional taxi negotiation still exists, but is largely unnecessary in cities where app-based services operate. Costs are low enough that taxis become practical for routine transportation rather than just airport transfers or special occasions. Domestic flights connect major cities efficiently, with modern airlines operating international standard aircraft on routes that would otherwise require days of ground transportation. Flight prices remain reasonable compared to international standards, making air travel accessible for middle-class domestic travelers and budget-conscious international visitors covering long distances quickly. Car rental and driving require serious consideration of infrastructure realities and cultural factors. Major highways between cities are generally good, but secondary roads can be challenging. Fuel availability is reliable along main routes but becomes sparse in remote areas. Navigation systems work but may not reflect recent road changes or construction projects. Driving culture reflects the same hospitality traditions that characterize other aspects of Kazakh society. Locals often stop to assist drivers with obvious problems, share fuel in emergencies, and provide directions even when language barriers make communication difficult. However, traffic enforcement can be inconsistent, and understanding local driving customs prevents misunderstandings with police or other drivers. The seasonal impact on transportation is dramatic and needs to be factored into any travel planning. Winter conditions can make many roads impassable and significantly extend journey times even on major routes. Summer heat creates different challenges. particularly for older vehicles or routes through desert areas. Spring and autumn provide optimal conditions, but also coincide with peak domestic travel periods. Hitchhiking remains culturally acceptable and relatively safe, but operates on payment expectations rather than free rides. Drivers typically expect compensation for fuel costs, making hitchhiking more like informal taxi service than free transportation. This system provides backup transportation options in areas where formal services are limited. Walking and cycling infrastructure exists primarily in major cities, with pedestrian areas and bike lanes becoming more common in central districts. However, the scale of distances and climate extremes make these options impractical for anything beyond local transportation within urban areas. The impact of transportation costs on overall travel budgets is one of Kazakhstan's major advantages for budget-conscious visitors. Ground transportation costs are low enough that extended overland travel becomes financially feasible rather than being limited by transportation expenses. This opens up itinerary possibilities that would be prohibitively expensive in most other countries of comparable size. Let's examine the specific question that brought us here. Can you actually survive on $700 in Kazakhstan? And what kind of lifestyle does that money provide? The short answer is not only can you survive, you can live better than you would on twice that amount in most Western cities. But the details of how that works reveal the economic realities that make Kazakhstan such an interesting case study in post-Soviet development. Accommodation costs vary dramatically based on location and standards, but remain low by international comparison across all categories. Budget hostels in major cities charge $18.50 per night for dormitory beds that meet international backpacker standards. Private rooms in guest houses or budget hotels run $15–30 per night. Mid-range hotels that would cost $100+ nightly in Western cities charge $30 or $50 here, often with better service and amenities than you'd expect at those price points. Food costs are where Kazakhstan becomes almost absurd compared to Western standards. A substantial meal at a good local restaurant, including appetizer, main course, transportation within cities costs pocket change by international standards. Bus fares typically run around $0 – $50. Metro rides cost similar amounts. Taxi trips across major cities rarely exceed $5 or $10. Even private car hire for day trips to attractions outside cities costs less than many Western cities charge for airport transfers. Entertainment and activities show the biggest variations in cost structure. Local attractions, museums, and cultural sites charge minimal admission fees, often under $5. However, international-style restaurants, bars, and clubs in major cities approach Western pricing, particularly for imported alcohol and premium experiences. Adventure activities like hiking, skiing, or cultural tours remain remarkably affordable compared to similar experiences elsewhere. Shopping for necessities reveals the economic advantages that make extended stays practical. Clothing from local and regional manufacturers costs significantly less than Western equivalents, while often meeting comparable quality standards. Electronics and international brands carry premium pricing due to import costs, but local alternatives often provide good value. Healthcare costs, while not typically major budget considerations for short-term visitors, demonstrate the broader economic environment. Basic medical care, dental work, and pharmaceuticals cost fractions of Western prices while maintaining reasonable quality standards. This makes Kazakhstan attractive for digital nomads and long-term visitors who might need occasional medical attention. The $700 monthly budget breaks down roughly as follows for a comfortable but not luxurious lifestyle. Accommodation $200, $300, food $150, $200. Local transportation $50. Entertainment and activities $100, $150. Miscellaneous expenses $50, $100. This provides comfortable private accommodation, regular restaurant meals, occasional nightlife, domestic travel, and cultural activities without requiring careful budget management. For more adventurous travelers willing to use hostels, eat primarily local food, and focus on low-cost activities, $700 monthly would allow quite luxurious experiences. You could afford regular domestic flights, private tour guides, high-end restaurant experiences, and shopping without seriously impacting the overall budget. The economic disparities that make these prices possible also create ethical considerations for foreign visitors. Local average salaries are significantly lower than Western standards, making it important to understand that your travel budget represents substantial money in the local economy. Tipping appropriately and paying fair prices for services supports local communities without being exploitative. Regional price variations can be significant, with costs in Astana and central Almaty approaching international levels for some goods and services, while smaller cities and rural areas maintain very low pricing. Understanding these variations helps optimize budgets and creates opportunities to experience different aspects of Kazakh life at various price points. Seasonal pricing affects accommodation and some activities, but generally remains predictable and reasonable. Peak tourist seasons, summer for outdoor activities, winter for skiing, see moderate price increases but nothing approaching the dramatic seasonal pricing common in major international destinations. Currency exchange and payment methods affect practical budget management significantly. The Kazakhstani tenge fluctuates against major currencies, creating opportunities for visitors holding stable foreign currencies to benefit from favorable exchange rates. Credit card acceptance is common in cities, but cash remains necessary for many transactions, particularly outside major urban areas. Banking and ATM access is generally reliable in cities, with international cards widely accepted. However, transaction fees can add up for frequent withdrawals, making it worthwhile to understand local banking partnerships and optimize cash management strategies. The broader economic context that creates these pricing advantages stems from Kazakhstan's resource-based economy, currency values, and labor costs that remain disconnected from international service pricing. This creates temporary opportunities for foreign visitors that may change as the economy develops and integrates further with international markets. Long-term budget planning reveals that Kazakhstan offers exceptional value for extended stays, digital nomad lifestyles, or sabbatical travel. The combination of low costs, modern infrastructure, and cultural richness creates opportunities for immersive experiences that would be financially impossible in most other destinations, offering comparable amenities and safety. Kazakhstan's attractions and natural wonders deserve serious attention because they represent some of the most spectacular and least crowded outdoor experiences available anywhere in the world. This isn't marketing hyperbole. We're talking about landscapes and natural phenomena that rival famous international destinations while remaining almost completely unknown to international tourism. Charyn Canyon exemplifies what makes Kazakhstan's natural attractions so remarkable. Often called the Grand Canyon of Central Asia, it features dramatic red rock formations, deep gorges, and geological structures that create otherworldly landscapes. The Valley of Castles section presents rock formations that look like medieval fortifications carved by wind and water over millions of years. What makes this experience unique is the complete absence of crowds. You can hike for hours without seeing another person, experiencing natural grandeur and solitude that's impossible at famous international destinations. The hiking opportunities around Charyn range from easy walks suitable for casual visitors to challenging multi-day treks for serious outdoor enthusiasts. The geology creates microclimates and ecosystems that support wildlife not found elsewhere in the region. Photography opportunities are endless, with dramatic lighting conditions that change throughout the day, creating completely different visual experiences from the same viewpoints. Big Almaty Lake represents alpine beauty that rivals anything in the Swiss Alps, except you can have it completely to yourself. Located at 2,500 meters altitude in the Trans-Ili Alatau Mountains, The lake creates mirror reflections of snow-capped peaks in turquoise water that changes color based on seasons and weather conditions. The drive to reach the lake passes through multiple climate zones, from city environments through forest to alpine meadows. The hiking trails around Big Almaty Lake provide access to higher peaks and remote areas that offer multi-day trekking opportunities through pristine wilderness. Wildlife includes ibex, snow leopards, and golden eagles, though sightings require patience and luck. The area serves as a watershed for Almaty's water supply, creating additional environmental protections that maintain the pristine character. Kolsai Lakes, often called the Pearls of Tian Shan, consist of 3 alpine lakes connected by hiking trails that provide access to some of the most beautiful mountain scenery in Central Asia. Each lake offers different characteristics and difficulty levels for access. The lower lake is easily accessible by car, while reaching the upper lakes requires increasingly challenging hikes through pristine mountain forests. The wildlife around Kolsai includes brown bears, wolves, and numerous bird species that aren't found in more developed mountain regions. Fishing is permitted in the lakes, providing opportunities for trout fishing in stunning alpine settings. Camping is allowed with permits, creating opportunities for multi-day wilderness experiences under some of the clearest night skies visible anywhere. Kaindy Lake presents one of the world's most unusual natural phenomena: a forest of submerged spruce trees creating ghostly underwater formations in crystal-clear mountain water. The lake was formed by an earthquake that created a natural dam, flooding a forest and preserving the trees underwater. The result is hauntingly beautiful scenery that attracts photographers and nature lovers from around the world. The underwater forest remains visible through the clear water, creating reflections and visual effects that change with lighting conditions throughout the day. The area around Kaindy offers hiking trails through different forest ecosystems, from dense spruce forests to open meadows filled with wildflowers during summer months. Altyn-Emel National Park protects diverse ecosystems ranging from desert landscapes to mountain forests, including the famous singing dune that produces musical tones when sand shifts in wind conditions. The park covers over 4,600 square kilometers, making it larger than many countries, yet receives minimal international visitors despite containing some of Central Asia's most unique natural features. The wildlife in Altyn-Emel includes endangered species like the Przewalski's horse, kulan, wild ass, and various antelope species that have been reintroduced after near extinction. Birdwatching opportunities include species that migrate along ancient flyways between Europe and Asia, creating seasonal viewing opportunities for rare species. The singing dune itself represents a geological phenomenon that occurs in only a few places worldwide. The dune reaches heights of 150 meters and produces sounds ranging from low hums to musical tones when sand moves under specific wind and moisture conditions. The acoustic effects can be heard from several kilometers away and create almost supernatural experiences when conditions are optimal. Shymbulak Ski Resort provides winter sports opportunities that rival international destinations while maintaining much lower costs and smaller crowds. The resort offers skiing and snowboarding from November through April, with modern lift systems and groomed runs suitable for all skill levels. Off-piste opportunities for advanced skiers provide access to pristine powder in backcountry areas. Summer activities at Shymbulak include hiking, mountain biking, and scenic chairlift rides that provide access to high-altitude trails without requiring technical climbing skills. The resort serves as a base for accessing higher peaks and wilderness areas that offer multi-day trekking opportunities for serious mountaineers. The Aral Sea region, while representing an environmental disaster, provides unique travel experiences for visitors interested in understanding large-scale environmental change. The former seabed now contains ship graveyards and abandoned fishing villages that create surreal landscapes unlike anything else on Earth. While visiting requires careful planning and local guides, the experience provides powerful perspectives on environmental issues and human adaptation to dramatic change. Mangistau Province offers desert landscapes and underground mosques that showcase Kazakhstan's Islamic heritage in unique geological settings. The region includes natural sculptures carved by wind erosion, underground religious sites, and vast desert expanses that provide opportunities for camel trekking and desert camping experiences. Practical considerations for visiting Kazakhstan's natural attractions include understanding seasonal accessibility, permit requirements, and infrastructure limitations. Many attractions require 4WD vehicles for access, and weather conditions can change rapidly in mountain areas. However, organized tours from major cities provide access for visitors without specialized equipment or experience. The lack of international tourism infrastructure at most natural attractions means visitors need to be more self-sufficient than at developed international destinations. This creates opportunities for authentic wilderness experiences but requires proper preparation for outdoor activities and understanding of local conditions and customs. Safety considerations for outdoor activities in Kazakhstan generally involve standard mountain and desert precautions rather than security concerns. Weather can change rapidly, altitude effects are significant at many locations, and communication infrastructure is limited in remote areas. However, local guides and tour operators provide reliable access to attractions with appropriate safety measures for international visitors. The photographic opportunities throughout Kazakhstan as natural attractions rival those at famous international destinations while providing the advantage of uncrowded conditions that allow for patient composition and optimal timing. Landscape photography in particular benefits from the dramatic lighting conditions and pristine environments that have not been impacted by heavy tourism development. Practical travel information reveals Kazakhstan's accessibility advantages that make it surprisingly easy to visit despite its reputation as a remote destination. Visa policies have been liberalized significantly, with many nationalities now eligible for visa-free entry for stays up to 30 days. This eliminates the bureaucratic barriers that previously complicated travel planning. Entry requirements for most Western passport holders require only valid passports and completed registration cards provided during arrival procedures. The registration process has been streamlined and digitized, reducing the paperwork burden that previously created confusion for international visitors. Extensions and visa conversions remain possible for longer stays, with online application processes that work more efficiently than many European systems. Airport infrastructure in Almaty and Astana meets international standards with modern terminals, efficient immigration processing, and reliable ground transportation connections to city centers. International flight connections are available through major hubs in Europe, Asia, and the Middle East, making Kazakhstan accessible from most global departure points with single connections. SIM card acquisition and mobile service is straightforward, with multiple carriers offering prepaid plans that include substantial data allowances at very reasonable costs. 4G coverage is reliable in cities and along major transportation routes, though remote areas may have limited or no coverage. International roaming through major carriers works but typically costs more than local SIM cards. Internet infrastructure in cities is excellent, with widespread Wi-Fi availability in hotels, restaurants, and public spaces. Connection speeds support video calling and streaming without issues. Cyber cafes remain common for travelers without devices, though smartphone ubiquity has reduced demand for these services. Language barriers are manageable in major cities, where English proficiency is increasing rapidly among younger generations, particularly in tourism and service industries. Russian serves as a lingua franca throughout the region and is more widely spoken than English in most situations. However, translation apps and basic phrase knowledge combined with Kazakh hospitality make communication possible even without shared languages. Currency exchange is straightforward, with banks and exchange offices offering competitive rates for major currencies. ATM networks are extensive in cities, accepting international cards with reasonable fees. Credit card acceptance is common in hotels, restaurants, and shops in urban areas, though cash remains necessary for many smaller establishments and rural areas. Weather considerations vary dramatically by season and region, requiring careful planning based on intended activities and travel dates. Summer temperatures can exceed 40 degrees in southern regions, while winter conditions in northern areas can drop below 40 degrees. Spring and autumn provide optimal conditions for most activities, but coincide with peak domestic travel periods. Packing recommendations depend heavily on intended activities and seasons, but generally should include layers suitable for dramatic temperature variations, particularly in mountain regions where conditions can change rapidly. Outdoor gear for hiking and camping activities may be difficult to find locally, making it worthwhile to bring specialized equipment. Health precautions are minimal, with no mandatory vaccinations required and standard travel health measures sufficient for most visitors. Water quality in cities is generally safe, though bottled water is recommended for rural areas. Medical facilities in major cities meet reasonable standards, though travel insurance remains advisable for serious medical emergencies. Cultural sensitivity guidelines focus primarily on understanding Islamic customs and nomadic hospitality traditions, rather than complex social restrictions. Modest dress is appreciated but not required except in religious sites. Photography etiquette involves asking permission for portraits and respecting privacy in traditional communities. Shopping opportunities range from traditional crafts and textiles that showcase nomadic artistic traditions to modern consumer goods available in international standard shopping centers. Bargaining is expected in bazaars, but not in formal retail establishments. Traditional items like carpets, felt goods, and silver jewelry offer authentic souvenirs that represent actual cultural heritage rather than tourist trinkets. Time zone considerations affect communication with home countries and jet lag management, with Kazakhstan spanning 2 time zones but most tourist destinations operating on Almaty time, UTC+6. This creates manageable time differences with most global destinations, while minimizing internal complications for domestic travel. Transportation planning requires understanding the scale of distances involved and seasonal variations in accessibility. Domestic flights provide efficient connections between major cities, while ground transportation offers opportunities to see landscapes and smaller communities at the cost of significantly longer travel times. Looking back at this vast country from my final evening in Almaty, watching the sun set behind the Tian Shan Mountains while the city lights begin to twinkle below, I'm struck by how completely Kazakhstan exceeded every expectation I had. This isn't the post-Soviet backwater that most people imagine. This isn't the cultural desert portrayed in outdated stereotypes. This is a country that has quietly built something remarkable while the rest of the world was looking elsewhere. The $700 question that started this journey now seems almost irrelevant. Yes, you can live comfortably on that amount here. You can eat well, stay in decent places, travel extensively, and experience culture and nature that rival anything the world has to offer. But the real story isn't about budget travel. It's about discovering a destination that offers experiences unavailable anywhere else, at prices that make them accessible to regular people rather than luxury travelers. The nightlife seen alone would be worth the trip. Watching locals dressed like they're headed to Paris Fashion Week party until dawn in clubs that wouldn't look out of place in London, all while paying prices that would barely cover appetizers in Western capitals, creates cognitive dissonance that takes days to process. These aren't people pretending to be cosmopolitan. They are cosmopolitan, educated, traveled, and sophisticated, living lives that happen to be dramatically less expensive than similar lifestyles elsewhere. The cultural complexity keeps revealing new layers the longer you stay. Traditional nomadic hospitality is not performance for tourists. It's genuine cultural programming that views caring for strangers as sacred duty. The result is travel experiences that restore faith in human decency while providing practical support that makes independent travel easier and safer than most international destinations. The natural beauty operates on scales that dwarf most famous international attractions while remaining almost completely undeveloped for tourism. You can have Grand Canyon-level scenery entirely to yourself. You can hike for days through pristine wilderness without seeing another person. You can experience geological phenomena that exist nowhere else on Earth, all without fighting crowds or paying premium prices for access. The food scene evolution happening in real time creates opportunities to witness cultural renaissance as it develops. Traditional nomadic cuisine is being rediscovered, refined, and presented in ways that honor heritage while meeting contemporary standards. The result is eating experiences that are simultaneously ancient and cutting-edge, familiar and completely unique. But perhaps most importantly, Kazakhstan represents something increasingly rare in international travel: authenticity that hasn't been packaged for tourist consumption. The hospitality, culture, landscapes, and experiences exist for their own reasons rather than being manufactured for visitor entertainment. This creates opportunities for genuine cultural exchange and personal growth that packaged tourism rarely provides. The economic advantages that make Kazakhstan accessible won't last forever. As the country continues developing and integrating with international markets, prices will inevitably rise toward international standards. Infrastructure will improve, but may lose some of the character that comes from adaptation and improvisation. Tourism will develop, but may diminish the sense of discovery that makes current visits feel like exploration rather than consumption. For travelers seeking experiences rather than just destinations, Kazakhstan offers something exceptional: the opportunity to witness a culture and country in transition, to experience landscapes and traditions that remain largely unknown to international tourism, and to do so affordably while contributing to local communities that benefit from respectful tourism development. The stereotypes and misconceptions that keep most travelers away from Kazakhstan work in favor of those willing to look beyond surface impressions. While crowds fight for space at overpriced famous destinations, Kazakhstan offers comparable or superior experiences with costs, crowds, and authenticity levels that make travel feel like discovery again rather than commodity consumption. If you're still wondering whether Kazakhstan deserves a place on your travel list, the answer is unequivocally yes. But the real question is whether you're ready for travel that challenges assumptions, provides genuine surprises, and offers experiences that can't be replicated elsewhere at any price. Kazakhstan isn't for everyone, but for travelers seeking authenticity, adventure, and value, it might just be perfect. And if you do make the trip, remember that you're visiting a country in transition, a culture rediscovering itself, and people who view hosting strangers as both privilege and responsibility. Approach with respect, curiosity, and appropriate appreciation for the hospitality you'll receive, and Kazakhstan will provide travel experiences that redefine your understanding of what's possible in the world today. The $700 budget that brought us here becomes almost beside the point when you realize what's really available: the opportunity to experience a remarkable country at the perfect moment in its development, when it's modern enough to be comfortable but traditional enough to be authentic, sophisticated enough to be impressive, but affordable enough to be accessible. That combination won't exist forever, making now the ideal time to discover what Kazakhstan has been quietly preparing for the rest of the world.